evening, race fans. Welcome to iRacing's coverage of the 2021 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series Clash. Live tonight for the virtual Daytona International Speedway in Daytona Beach, Florida. A warm welcome to those of you watching on iRacing's platforms and eNASCAR.com. I'm James Pike, joined tonight by Joe Peak and Blake McCandless. And Joe, we have 11 rookies in this, the 12th campaign of the Coke Series. And those 11 rookies to make this potentially one of the most competitive seasons yet.
Absolutely. And not only that, this is a pretty important race for those rookies because with there being no points on the line, they've got free reign to kind of test the waters here and see what it's like racing with the big boys now. They might not have that much pro level experience, so they can really kind of get a flavor of what the racing is like with all these talented drivers around them.
And Blake, in addition to the 11 new drivers, we have 4 new teams that joined this series for 2021. Elliott Sadler Esports, McLaren Shadow, Space Station Gaming, and XSET.
And that's exactly right, James. And I don't think there's anybody that's more motivated, more ready to go than these brand new teams to try and showcase the new talent they've brought in, and as well as what Joe was mentioning earlier, getting all these new rookies up to speed here in the Clash.
Let's take a little bit closer look at Daytona International Speedway. This one of the most famous racetracks in all the world, Joe Peak, and for very, very good reason.
Yeah, well, first of all, it really is right next to the Daytona Beach. It's just a stone's throw away. But the important thing to note about it is at 2.5 miles in length and 31 degrees of banking in the turns, it's one of the fastest tracks on the NASCAR circuit. So things will really be kicking off here. And with it being opened in 1959, Blake, I have a feeling that our driver is going to be adding to that lore today.
They certainly are, Joe. You think about the great pack racing that we've seen here at Daytona over the years. We're certainly going to add to that tonight, but all that's going to come into play. All 3 grooves are in play tonight, working well with others, having to work with the pack, find your friends out there. That's all going to be key to ending up in victory lane tonight.
These drivers will travel in excess of 200 miles an hour at different points throughout this evening. But at this point, it's time to take a look at your starting grid, which sees the defending champion start right where he left off last season. Nick Ottinger with a 47.920 claims the top spot in the poll for the class. He's joined on the outside of the front row by Derek Justice, newcomer for JTC Doherty Racing, Keegan Leahy and company. Very fast cars in that first 6, Joe.
Yeah, and then when you get the next 6, of course, Ashton Crowder at the front of them. But don't count out guys like Ryan Luza back there for the XSET team. A lot of power in that team, and I'm sure he's going to be hungry.
Well, you know, I'm looking at a guy like Malik Ray, always been tough at these plate tracks. He's with a brand new team. I think he's out to prove something. He'll have to come up starting from row number 9.
Casey Kerwin, another one of the XSET drivers coming in, as you see some of the other drivers that will take part in tonight's race and some of the folks that will have to work their way through the field in order to get to the front by night's edge. Blake McCandless, should be a lot of fun this evening. What's the weather like down in Daytona?
Well, the weather we have for tonight, James, 78 degrees, so relatively hot. You think about this time of year, that's about what you would have at the Daytona International Speedway. Just slight 2-mile-per-hour wind, so nothing too drastic there. And of course, you see that 94, and now it raises to 95-degree track temperature. So this is kind of weather that a lot of these guys are going to be accustomed to seeing. Of course, when you think about cooling these engines, everything that goes into that, this is weather that these drivers, I think, are going to be very familiar with. Should give us some great racing.
Of note here that the in-sim time is today, February 1st, 2021. Usually a little bit different, Joe Peak, from the May 15th that we tend to see in a lot of official races on iRacing. So maybe a little bit cooler, but then again, it's still Daytona. It's still going to be warm. You're right near the beach after all.
Yeah, and well, like we mentioned on that heat, it's better for them in the sense that it'll be harder to blow up the cars with it not being too warm. And in fact, they've helped the drivers out a little bit on that. The fixed setup that they're running on tonight has a little bit less tape on it, so hopefully that will allow them to basically race a little bit harder and be in these draft packs a little bit tighter and closer and push more.
Here's your first look at our driver wall and some of the faces that you may already know or you're going to come to know over the course of this 2021 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series season. Everybody's set to go for another season of competition. We'll have one competition caution around the halfway break, somewhere in that range of 28 to 32 laps. We'll go for 60 laps this evening, 150 miles, 241.2 kilometers to get the season going. Blake McCandless, final thoughts before we take the green.
I'm just ready to get going, James. It's been a long offseason. We mentioned all the new faces. How about the rookies that we have here tonight? Long list of them. I'm just ready to get going and see these guys kind of get back up to speed. This is exactly what a race like this is for. To get back up to speed, everybody kind of shakes off the off-season dust and gets ready to go here in just about a week.
You'll notice the red numbers on Nick Ottinger's car. That's to honor his championship from a season ago. He's the only driver with red numbers on his car in tonight's field, so he will stand out and be very easy to find. We're glad that you're with us here on iRacing's platforms at eNASCAR.com as we wait for the green flag to unfurl and the 2021 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series Clash from Daytona is underway. Nick Ottinger leading this field around this 2.5-mile facility for the first time, and he will lead lap 1 after taking the pole. Really solid stuff already, and you're starting to see some action a little bit further back, but everybody 2 by 2 early on, Joe Pete.
Absolutely. This is kind of what I expected for the first few laps, just as we heard from Blake saying, they got to feel things out a little bit because there's new names and new faces. They don't know how they're going to behave, so just kind of feeling each other out. But we got to remember, with everything being all for fun out here today, essentially, drivers are free to get aggressive. So a lot of them have told me that they expect things to get a little bit wild and rather quickly.
You look off the back of Nick Ottinger at the number 32 of Keegan Leahy with 23.11. That's a rebrand from Denny Hamlin Esports of a season ago. He stays put at the same team, but Blake, this is just as much of a chance for us it is for everybody at home to get used to these new team names, these new driver combinations, and all the parts and pieces that will make up this Coke Series in 2021.
You're exactly right there, James. As we take a look, you can already see that third lane starting to move up there. It was Garrett Lowe there in the 21 machine. He was leading that line, but here we go. The third lane is already starting to form up. You see Vicente Salas right there with Space Station Gaming. He's leading that line, but now Graham Boland for Storehouse Esports, he jumps up in front of him. They are 3 wide all the way throughout the pack.
One thing I'm keeping an eye on here is the drivers that did not qualify for this one. Some of them are starting to move up, it appears. Now, our viewers might be wondering, why wouldn't we have everybody qualify? Why would you choose not to go out there and put a time down? In plate racing like this, oftentimes it's advantageous to get yourself some space and try to suss things out first. And so that's why they just kind of want to start themselves from the back. We had 5 drivers who did that. The highest up of them right now is Steven Wilson, right in the 17 car.
Few drivers riding towards the very back of this field, but it's Graham Boland up at the front for the moment with Ottinger coming to his inside. Boland with a new team for 2021 with Stewart-Haas Esports. He takes over the number 10 machine and had a strong run in his rookie campaign last year, Blake.
Well, he certainly did. He impressed a lot of team owners out there. Certainly that Storehouse Esports was good to snatch him up as he just went and took that third line and eventually got down to clear to go to the race lead. Still Nick Ottinger, and he's side by side for the race lead as they work 2 wide for the first couple of rows, but still it is 3 wide all the way throughout the pack as we were riding on board there for a moment there with Ashton Crowder. Elliott Sadler Esports, one of the new teams that you were talking about, James, brand new to this series, trying to move their way to the front.
Elliott Sadler Esports, Ashton Crowder. You sort of see that gold and red nose in the number 1 car there alongside the teammate to Nick Ottinger, who currently is out there on front on the inside. Logan Clampett in the 97. He's shuffled around and now already works really well with Nick Ottinger and races a lot within the official competition, Joe Peak, and now they're teammates in the Coke Series for the first time.
Yeah, certainly getting adjusted to those teammates is going to be a big thing, but you have to remember that there's a lot of tech alliances behind the scenes where people still have associations and buddies that they're still working side by side with quite a lot. So that should hopefully help them adjust a lot easier.
And if you might be interested in more information on how to start your iRacing career, you can log on to iRacing.com today, where new memberships are available for 40% off the regular price. Riding on board with Ryan Luza in the number 4 machine, driving for XSET. He shuffled teams in 2021, and now his teammate to Casey Kerwin, who drives the 38 for XSET. Should be a really strong pairing, I think, Blake.
No, you're certainly right. As Ryan Luza coming over here to XSET along with Casey Kerwin, two of the high-profile names in this series. We've seen a lot of these names, Space Station and XSET in particular, really making a splash, not only with the drivers they brought in, but the reveals that they had. A lot of hype going around these brand-new race teams, as we still see. Look at that shot right there, 3 wide. We even see, I believe that's a Roush Fenway gaming car back there shuffling around. They are still just 3 wide all the way throughout the pack.
That was actually the 17 of Wilson that we saw, the one that I mentioned before. He's no longer the highest one to not have qualified. That one is now Michael Guest, actually. Wilson's gone to the back of those 5, still sitting in 33rd currently.
This is John Gorlinski that you see now trying to work the middle as they enter turn number 1. Gorlinski, another one of the drivers that shuffled teams in the offseason. He now at Wood Brothers Racing and teammate to Garrett Lowe, who you see right on the outside there on the right-hand side.
Had a car in the grass. Looks like Gorlinski got a little tap to the side of Luza, and so he's now lost the group, unfortunately. I think he's the only one that has dropped away from that at this point. Everybody else still has hold of the slipstream.
Blake, we talked about the power of teammates, and you can see at the bottom of your screen the William Byron Esports drivers are just about hooked up. We haven't seen teammates necessarily line up 1-2 in a row, but we figure they will at some point in this race. But very, very, very scary if Attrition and Clamp get hooked up this early on.
Well, they're hooked up. Meanwhile, back in the pack, that's where all the action has been going on. We just saw Taylor Hurst back there. They were 4 wide for just a moment as the 33 got shoved from the back. That Team Dillon Esports machine went right to the bottom, but luckily they were able to save it. So each of the last 2 laps, we've seen 2 drivers go off. You see Taylor Hurst right there. He's able to collect it up. Ryan Liesel, unfortunately, he has completely lost the lead draft. He's going to have to hope that these guys wreck him up. And I got to tell you, one car's out of shape. That's Junior Motorsports machine. I believe that's Michael Conti down there. They are just beebing and bobbing around here on the straightaways.
It's happened over the last 5 laps a few times, Joe Peak, out of turn 4 in particular. So if you're in this pack and you're sort of antsy as it is, do you have a sense as to why people are shuffling around and people are moving around, I think, a little bit more than we expected at this point in the race?
Well, it's like I said earlier, there's nothing on the line, so if you're going to make moves, might as well try and see what sticks. We heard last summer, Letarte actually mentioned one time when he was talking to Junior, that Junior's philosophy was, if you got to move, take it. Don't ever pass it by. And I think that's kind of the philosophy we're seeing with a lot of these drivers.
It's that, plus, Blake, I think some of these drivers are building up a notebook. They're learning how to race with one another, how this field races as a group. A lot of these drivers haven't necessarily had the chance to race in this same sort of combination and learning what may work, especially as we get towards the end of this race at lap 60.
I think you're right, James, and that's kind of what we were interested in seeing. We have a lot of rookies in here. Do you want to come out here and make a good name for yourself, build some respect amongst your competitors, or are you going to come out here, perhaps make a few mistakes and not make any friends as you move forward to when we start collecting points in just a week in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series? So I think we're getting the answer right now, and in a race where no points are on the line, everybody's trying to showcase that they're ready to go for 2021. I got to tell you, I don't think any of these rookies, veterans, you name it, everybody is going all out right now as they're still 3 wide all the way throughout the pack.
It's about 3 wide, 10 rows deep, and more than half the field up here in this very front pack, ready to make things happen, as we are going to dive in a little bit deeper and ride on board with XSET's Casey Kerwin in tonight's first Coca-Cola Onboard.
You guys were talking about the new teams and whatnot tonight and how that'll affect things. I tell you what, I think Ryan Luza just discovered that. He called out to Ray Alfala for some help. Ray's response, new phone, who dis?
Maybe a little bit of love between those two, Blake, at best, perhaps?
Perhaps, but I'm looking at that onboard shot there from Casey. It's a really tough position to be in. You're about in the worst position possible if you're stuck there in the middle line. There's nowhere to go. You can't go high, you can't go low, and you see about half a car length, maybe even a quarter for some of these guys separation. That's them trying to keep the temperatures cool. When everybody's locked in a pack, there's never any clean air. You can take all the tape off you want, but these guys locked in together. You see the 1 and the 25 there pushing out Nick Ottinger as they try to go into turn 3. But that separation that you see, that's all these guys, while they're in the pack, trying their best to cool down.
And that's part of the game here, isn't it? As a few cars bobble out of turn 4, Joe Peak, but sometimes you're going to be right up on somebody's rear bumper, but at the same time, if you push somebody and you maybe gain that extra 10th or 2, you also increase the water temperatures in your engines and start running up, maybe 270, 280. We'll see whether or not that affects drivers later on, but we'll introduce our 4th member of our team tonight. We'll head now down to pit road with Tim Terry.
Gentlemen, glad to be a part of the broadcast one more time this season. And when you look at this race, it's fun. It's a light atmosphere. A lot of these teams are lighter than they usually are and than they will be next week. But talking to some of these teams, they're waiting on pit strategy. We mentioned competition yellow happening in this race. You might see some teams come down a little bit earlier. Into Blake's earlier point, talked about tape. Some of these teams are talking about what they want to run on tape, what lane they want to run, and what percentage they want to run on the front grille. So there's a lot of chatter going on, but for the most part, it's lighthearted at the early part of this clash.
Lighthearted save for that tape discussion, Joe, which dovetails nicely with what we were talking about right before we went to Tim, how the amount of tape that you run on these grills can affect how quickly the water temperature can shoot up and then come back down when you're in clean air.
And we actually might get 4 wide up at the front. In fact, we are going to get 4 wide. Ottinger, Bolin, Conti, and Leahy trying to stretch it into the corner. And I think it looks like the 8's going to bail out of that one.
So Michael Conti might have clipped the wall just a little bit out of turn 4. We'll see if that affects his car as Brad Davies gets turned in front of the field and Keegan Leahy goes sideways as cars wreck in the tri-oval and the yellow flag comes out for the very first time this evening, Blake.
Well, you see, we saw 4 wide at the front. Michael Conti scraped the outside wall. And, of course, these drivers so talented, James. They can get it off the wall. Everybody can sort it out. But in the ensuing chaos of giving room, trying to let Michael Conti collect that racing machine, it was contact there in around what was about the 8th position. I think Bob Bryant and his Kligerman Sport machine was around that. And then, of course, the rest of the field locked in 3, 4 wide. They just piled in nowhere for many of these drivers to go. That took out a lot of the back half of the field. They have some pretty significant damage.
We'll take a look at the replay here in just a moment and see what exactly happened. But, Joe, from what I can tell, it was Conti sort of getting out of line and that touch to the wall that just upset everybody right around the 10th position. And they went 4 wide through turn 4, which tends to funnel up a little bit more so than some of the other parts on this racetrack. And I think everybody just sort of bunching together on corner exit ended up causing that melee.
Yeah, and as we take a look at the replay, I think, unfortunately, as was mentioned, Bryant being involved, the 77, you're going to see he was kind of an innocent victim. He's going to get squeezed between 2 cars. He's already squeezed here, trying to make the 3 wide, 4 wide work. There you can see Bryant there in the middle of your screen. And then suddenly, on either side, you can't do much about that situation. You're just kind of along for the ride and at the mercy of other drivers. From there, it's just kind of take your pick. Everybody gets their own fair share of damage.
Not really much that he could have done. Brad Davies came up into him, and that sent everybody up into Keegan Leahy, and the spin there started everything. And there are a lot of drivers at the back of this field, Blake, that have a significant amount of damage to work with now.
Well, they do, and I think, James, this is what we're going to talk about. Each of these drivers possessed 1 fast repair coming into tonight. So obviously you have to imagine that for many of them, 15, 20 some odd cars that were involved in that accident, this is going to be the opportunity they have. We may see some of them try to last with that damage, but I really don't think that's going to happen. You're going to see a lot of these guys come down. We also have that competition caution on the horizon. We'll have to see if this will count as that. But yeah, that fast repair is going to be out the window for a lot of these guys, so they're kind of on their last mulligan, so to speak.
Bit of strategy there from Nick Ottinger, who decided to stay out as everybody else just about, Joe Peak, decides to come on in for potentially 4 tires and fuel.
Oh, and a few of them learning the hard way that you really got to get the pit stall right. Graham Boland, one of them, he came in first of everybody. It looks like he's going to fall back. I think Logan Clampett as well is going to suffer, which means the one of Crowder is going to take that Elliott Sadler Esports car up to the front of those who've pitted.
So Ottinger stays out, and Crowder wins the battle off of pit road. And just looking at timing and scoring, Blake McCandless, it looks like we have a few drivers who decided to take 2 tires instead of 4.
And that's not really a surprise here, as we'll take a look at Nick Ottinger, who is the lone driver to stay out. And I got to say, I really like this call by Ottinger. When you're in the lead, you can control this race. He stays out. And of course, they can make it on fuel until potentially that competition caution is coming out. So there's really nothing to lose. The tires aren't going to fall off that much at Daytona. So really nice call here from Ottinger, kind of, trying to take a risk in a race that, you can try these things out, see how it's going to pan out next week. That's another thing this race is, James. It's a test session for a lot of these guys to try and figure out strategies, work with people for next week. So we'll see how staying out on old tires works out for Nick Ottinger here.
Conversely, Joe, some of these drivers that came down during this yellow flag, in theory, if you catch the caution right, and you might need a little bit more help, but you're right on the edge of making it to 60 laps if you stay out the rest of the way. We do have the competition caution that's still coming, but we'll see how it pans out as we're now joined in the booth by our defending series champion, Nick Ottinger. And Nick, you stay out here on this first yellow flag. Just take us through the decision-making process that led you to keep that number 25 out on the racetrack.
Yeah, man, we're just here, to do the best we can for strategy-wise to put ourselves in the best spot to win this class, but just give us the best information we can on our, Warren Byron esports machine here, for when real points racing, becomes, Monday. So trying some different strategies, put ourselves in a better spot to control the race up here on old tires, just to get a good gauge if we're in that spot for, when it comes next Monday.
You've been running up at the front for just about the majority of this race. Have you learned anything in particular besides it keeps you away from some of the melee and the mayhem behind you?
It's taught me, you're always wanting to try to learn, and, every race presents different challenges, and, this is just, one of those things where you can always keep learning at, in sim racing. So the safest place pretty much up in that blimp. So the lead, just because you're in the lead, don't mean you're still safe.
Well, Nick, we'll let you get back to it. Thanks for the time, and best of luck the rest of the way.
Thank you, man.
That's Nick Ottinger for William Byron Esports, back in the number 25 Chevrolet Camaro in 2021, and back as the defending series champion for the first time in his career, Joe P.
You have to wonder, how superstitious is the 25, though? Because one thing to note is that we have not had a Clash winner that's gone on to win the championship in the same year yet. So if Nick goes and wins it today, does he want to repeat, or does he put a lot of weight into, black cats and open ladders?
And no Clash winner has gone on to win the season opening race the next week, either in the 4 years that we have run this race. So maybe the history isn't necessarily on Nick Ottinger's side, but we'll see how it pans out as we go back to green flag racing at the World Center of Racing. 20 laps on the board of 60 in this Coke Series Clash, this preseason exhibition for 2021.
As they work up off of the banking, Nick Ottinger still going to lead here. You see these cars, they are all over the inside line, and already we are wondering, was the dust going to settle a little bit? Were we going to kind of slow things down after that big accident right there? It appears not, as they are still trying to get that third line forming there from around the 15th position. You see Jimmy Mullis right there, Richmond Raceway Esports machine, trying to get that third line to work, but he'll tuck back in line. So it looks like double file, at least for the time being, up front.
First time we've had the opportunity to call the Richmond Raceway Esports names, and they come back full force, same as they were a year ago. Jimmy Mullis back in the 46, Zach Novak in the 90. You see Mullis on the inside lane in the middle of the pack, and Novak on the outside there, just at the back of this field. And I have to believe, Joe Peak, at some point, given how well they worked together last year, that we will see them link up at some point in this race.
Oh, no doubt about that. And it seems like Richmond Raceway is sort of a trendsetter as well in how the drivers were chosen this year. A lot of other teams kind of watched them and said, "Oh, that's actually a good method," and it's kind of followed suit on how they paired up their drivers. So definitely watch out for them. With everybody kind of doing what they're doing, it means that everybody is indeed watching and keeping their eyes out for what the competition is doing and trying to use those advantages for their own benefit too.
As this race has progressed a little bit, you see that Molis has worked his way to the outside lane, but we have lots of fun and lots of storylines to cover, and a little bit of audio that we can give you now from Mitchell DeYoung from 2311.
Could they put like a little bit extra like bodywork on the rear bumper to like make it?
Yeah, for bumping.
Oh, okay.
Mold plate package.
Mitchell DeYoung with Bobby Zielinski. You know, those two known to work very well together. And you see Mitchell in the number 23, dead center of this pack on the outside lane. He's got some company to his outside. One of the Jim Beaver Esports machines, the number 15 machine of Kane Cook there. But a little bit of work for that group to do to get back up to the front. And it'll be a little bit harder, Blake, now that Keegan Leahy's got that damage.
It will be a little bit harder, and like you mentioned, Leahy didn't elect to take that fast repair, so he's thinking that there may be some more chaos afoot here later on in this race as they go three wide. Contact between Mitchell DeYoung and Kane Cook there in the middle of the corner. DeYoung had a big wiggle as he saved it. And look at Malik Ray, like we thought we would see that Space Station Gaming Ford pinching that line, being very aggressive here. We know Malik Ray is not going to hold anything back. He's trying to get that third line to work, and the further down that he works, we'll take an onboard shot right here. He's going to try to pinch that second lane as much as possible to try to get that run off the corner. He's got Kane Cook, a good friend of his, to help push him, and they are going right to the front. You see the big run they get here down the back straightaway.
I don't think we could come to Daytona and not call Malik Ray's name at some point, Joe Peak. He's had so much success at this track in iRacing throughout the years, and now gets to carry his talents to one of the new teams for this series in 2021, Space Station Gaming.
Yeah, and they're expected to make a big splash, as we saw bobble there from, I think that was the 37 down on the low side, one of our McLaren cars. If anyone can do it, I think Malik can make this work up on the high side, because from what I talked to on some of the drivers, it was expected that the high side won't really work. It'll stall out unless you try and pinch down exactly like you're seeing him do. Looks like he's got some friends in front of him, though. The 18 of Olot currently up in his nose as the Joe Gibbs racing car going to try to take advantage of the momentum of that high side.
Femi Olot in the 18 machine, one of those 11 rookies to the series for 2021. And he is a pretty good teammate, I would say, Blake McCandless, because it's not every day that you get to pair up with the four-time former series champion, Ray Alvala, as Ashton Crowder gets sent sideways and Ottinger goes off the racetrack, Blake.
They go off the racetrack. They save it. No caution flag as of yet. A couple of drivers actually make their way to pit road here, perhaps in anticipation of that competition yellow as well. But what a save right there from Ashton Crowder. Came right around, right in front of the lead. I was actually just going to talk about how Crowder was defending the middle line. He cuts back down. Unfortunately, there was a car there, so that'll shuffle the running order up front here for just a moment. It looks like emerging from all the chaos, Femi Olot, Bobby Zielinski now going to take control of the race lead.
Bobby Zielinski now with Latarn Esports says we will get the chance to see Zielinski flex his muscle out front for the first time, and you can see what happened on the right side of your screen to Ashton Crowder and Logan Clamp. It looked like he got a bump out of 4 from one of the Clint Boyer racing cars, and that's what sent those two down towards the infield, Joe.
A great catch by both of them. That's the thing where you can't panic, but instinct does take over in that moment. Now, the good news is it seems like they're not alone at the back of the field because Nick Ottinger is pulling along with Taylor Hurst and Casey Kerwin. Granted, I think Kerwin is damaged. So among that back group, they've got some friends, and they're trying to work together, see if they can catch back up.
As these drivers continue to work around Daytona International Speedway, it's Olot who's got control of the middle, Zielinski down low, and it's the 15 of Kane Cook for Jim Beaver Esports who gets turned coming out of turn 4, and the yellow flag comes out for the second time this evening, Blake.
Oh, trouble here, and that was all caused by these drivers. They are trying to get everything they can, and I think Blade Witt was running on the bottom side, clipped that double yellow line that, of course, in the middle of turn 4 is not where you want to be. He slides up, creates contact, and unfortunately, he tags Dylan Duval, and much like we saw earlier, the rest of the field continues to pile in. Another couple of cars with some heavy damage, and again, this is where it becomes, have you used that fast repair, or do you still have it in your back pocket? And with that, I believe this will be the competition caution.
It will indeed, as we'll give these drivers a chance to catch their breath, and we'll take a look at a few more angles of what happened out of turn 4 in just a moment. But to me, Joe, that seemed like the same principle that we dealt with on our first yellow flag, maybe a little bit more pronounced this time around, because we talked about how turn 4 tends to narrow up. That was the exit of the apex, arguably the narrowest of the narrow points here at Daytona. And when you get cars 3 wide in that spot of the racetrack, it can get really tricky really quick.
Yeah, not only that, but the fact that you're coming off the banking, that's when the car's transitioning. The weight is shifting around and you're changing your direction. So that's why you see, everything come together into this confluence of where we always see these wrecks, both in real life and here in the sim. All the drivers know it, but as you can see, there's little you can do to deal with it, unfortunately.
That was Blade Witt from Clinton Boyer Racing that came up into Kane Cook and set this up. But we are going to take a moment to step aside under the yellow flag, but don't go anywhere. We've got more action from Daytona International Speedway and the Clash for the 2021 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series coming up.
I am where it begins. The season, the story, all of it. I am the one and only place. I am first. But for everyone involved, I am everlasting. Not here to be kind or gentle. Why would I? This is what everyone dreams about. And for one, it all becomes reality. I am the Daytona 500. I am NASCAR.
Tonight's broadcast of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series Clash from Daytona is brought to you by Coca-Cola, the official fan refreshment of eNASCAR. Back under yellow flag of the World Center of Racing in this 2021 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series Clash. Second yellow flag of the evening near the midway point of the race in Blake McCandless. Most drivers came down pit road that last time by, but there were a handful of drivers who stayed out and now occupy the first few spots in the field.
And that is a very interesting call here by Graham Bolin, Michael Conti, a couple others here at the front of the field. I believe Femi Olot, his JGR machine, he was the first off of pit road. So the top 6, by my calculations, stayed out. And this is going to be really interesting. The last time they would have had a chance to come down pit road would have been around lap 20. We obviously go to lap 60 to end this race. There's about a 38-lap pit window to make it on fuel. So these guys are going to be very close. Obviously, these couple of cautions have helped them save a little bit of fuel, but if they can make it to the end, I think, again, that track position is going to be worth it.
And it goes back to the point that we made on the first yellow flag, Joe Peak, that there might be some drivers who elect to stay out and get that track position. So now, if you're Bolin or a Conti or a Justice or a Leahy, you have the spot at the front of the field, but you're also going to be right on the edge as far as fuel.
Exactly. But I think from what they've seen, this is basically, you're kind of just playing the odds here. And right now, the odds are that we're going to see some cautions because we've already got a number of them where we're only 30 laps into this thing. So likely in this latter half, we'll probably at least get one more and help them get that fuel to the end. But also because, as we've seen with those cautions, a lot of it happens within the pack, or at least if you're in the middle of the pack, you're very susceptible. So better to be up at the front and have the clear track ahead of be a
We'll see how it pans out over the next 30 laps as the green flag comes back out. And as we go back green flag racing, we're going to ride along with Junior Motorsports' Michael Conti as we go iRacing full throttle.
Maybe he's waiting for Derek to heat up or something. Who knows? Yellow. No, doesn't matter.
Now you can make it.
Yellow flag out again at Daytona. Blake McCandless cars going around on the exit of the tri-oval this time around.
And it seems like every single accident, doesn't it, James? We're getting it right off the exit of turn 4 or in the tri-oval, and that was once again the case right here. As you see a little bit of contact, I think it was Brian Schoenberg and Malik Ray that get tangled together, and then just the accordion effect throughout the field. I believe Brian Schoenberg, yes, he does. He squeezes Steven Wilson into the wall, and it has been the back half of the field that has fallen victim to a number of these crashes that have happened in this race. So that track position that those guys stayed out, I'm sure they're happy that they did it, and they're allowed to save fuel if we get green-white checkers. But, wow, it's just these guys, I'm amazed, James, at how aggressive they're being this early on.
It's a stark contrast to last year in the Clash where we went green flag racing all the way through. The fast repair that these drivers have that they didn't have a year ago, Joe Peak, really has changed the dynamic of this race and the way these drivers have approached it.
Yeah, I mean, it gives you that out. You know that if you do get involved in something, it allows you to get a fresh car as long as you don't go a lap down and still be in the race. Now, as you can see, the downside of that is that, well, we have a lot more cautions because everybody is just throwing it out the window and deciding, you know, to hell with it. But as we've got these drivers slowed up, it is also going to thin out the herd, if you will. So maybe that will help things out, as I think you've got Graham Boland here.
Graham, we chronicled your drive to the front here. You stayed out on old tires. I'm sure it feels like a pretty good decision right now after seeing the pack wadded up behind you.
Yeah, I mean, I just took fuel. I thought it was smarter. I didn't really think with the caution you can save fuel, so I think we can make it in easily. But yeah, I think it was a great call.
Well, Graham, I'll ask you this one question while this is all kind of preparation looking forward to next week. What can you take from a race like this where obviously right now everybody's on a level playing field? We'll kind of open things up, go back to open setup next week. What are you taking away, or what's your goal here for this race tonight?
Really, I'm just trying to go for the win here. It's going to be different next week. Everyone's going to be on top of their game. The setups are going to be faster. It's going to be harder to make moves. This is different, but it's still in the same boat. It's still good to have some laps before the season starts. It's a good exhibition race to start the season.
All right, Graham. Well, it's good to see that Stuart Haas Sports machine up front. We wish you best of luck the rest of the way.
Thank you.
Graham Boland, driver of the number 10 machine for Stuart Haas Esports, and really strong in his first season of competition. He showed a lot of promise in his climb up to the Coke Series last year, Joe Peak, and a solid debut season for Graham Boland in 2020. He'll look to build on that with a new team in 2021.
Certainly, and starting off in the Clash is probably a good way to build momentum, unless, like we've mentioned before, you're a superstitious person. But also, you know, that shows to your team that you've got what it takes. It doesn't matter if this is an on-points race. If you go out and win it first thing off for your new team, that's probably going to raise some eyebrows and make them say, okay, we made the right choice.
Here's a look at what happened to bring out this most recent yellow flag. You see Brian Schoenberg in the red Chevy Camaro for JTC Daugherty Racing bounces off of Malik Ray, then into Steven Wilson in the tri-oval. Kane Cook gets clipped by one of the Letarte Esports cars, and at that point, Blake McCandless, it's on from there.
Yeah, it certainly is. I think that was just a little bit of a disagreement there. I think Schoenberg not exactly sure if Ray was going to go back down to the bottom side of the racetrack or fill that hole that was in the middle, and it looks like just a miscalculation right there since Brian Schoenberg around his JTG racing machine. And unfortunately, like we've seen, this is eventually the part of the race where guys have used their fast repairs. They've been involved in multiple accidents. We finally see our first couple of cars that aren't going to be on the lead lap when we get back going green. Steven Wilson, Brian Schoenberg, Zach Novak is out of the race. So we're getting to this point where there's not going to be a whole lot of cars left here at the end, James, if we continue down this path.
Garrett Lowe and Mitchell DeYoung, the other two that have run out of fast repairs and are currently trying to get their cars fixed on pit road, but they are effectively out of contention for the win this evening. And we will start to see the attrition pick up if these wrecks continue. But Joe Peak, do you think that changes the way these drivers approach these last 25 laps?
I honestly don't think so. I think that they're going to keep pushing hard, especially the closer we get down to the checkered flag. At this point, too, you got to start making moves if you're down towards the back to get up towards the front. Now, we have heard it is pretty easy, but you got to do the work to make that happen. So the 3 wide is probably going to continue, and unfortunately that's going to up the risk, which means fewer green flags laps, and it's just a negative feedback loop where unfortunately everybody's got to be more aggressive because there's fewer laps to race.
We'll set the stage for you before we go green flag racing. Graham Bolin, Michael Conti, Derek Justice, Keegan Leahy, and Taylor Hurst are your first 5 cars. They all stayed out under this yellow flag. Garrett Maines for Elliott Sadler Esports in 6th is the first car that came down pit road, and everybody behind Garrett came down for service in some way, shape, or form. So it's the handful versus the field as Graham Bolin leads us back to green flag racing at the World Center of Racing.
And we'll see them form up very quickly right here. You can already see patience is out the window. You can already see that third line starting to develop here very slowly. So again, in a race where points don't seem to matter, these guys are holding absolutely nothing back. Ashton Crowder moving up to the high side. Now move Ray Alfala into the conversation there as they are trying to get that third lane to work already. But a new leader emerging out front, making his boss happy. That is Michael Conti, Junior Motorsports Machine, looking awfully sporty out front.
Michael Conti's been using that top line to good effect, and he's got good help behind him. Keegan Leahy in the 32 machine from 2311 pushing Conti to the front, and he'll nose ahead of Bolin to lead the lap at the stripe, Joe P.
Yeah, Conti and Leahy are a force to be reckoned with, 2 of the greatest in this series, and both veterans. As it looks like Conti's immediately going to abandon it and go down low. But from what I've heard, one of the big factors on who can get to the front is a bump from the 10. Bolin, unfortunately, going to get a little rough there with Conti, is that second car in line. Heat is still important because if you're pushing hard for a long time, it builds up. If you can get a cold car, quote unquote, behind you, then they can push you for longer, get you a better run. So finding someone, hooking up with someone who's let it cool off for a bit will serve you a lot better.
As Michael Conti continues to lead this group and continues to roll on. It's Leahy up top, Conti down low, and a lot of strong drivers in there. How about Derek Justice, Blake McCandless for JTT Darty?
That's exactly right. Derek Justice, one of those drivers that stayed out under that competition caution flag, and he has made it work out to where he is running right at front, third driver on the inside line. You can see the amount of room he's given to Graham Bolin, and you know, this is what's interesting here is that third car in line seems to have the biggest influence on who can move forward, who can move back. You can see Graham Bolin, he has been really shoving Michael Conti, giving him a good push up there, but that gap between Justice and Bolin, that's exactly why you see Keegan Leahy to the front right now. That third car in line just seems to have such an influence on what's happening here. Is now move the number 2 of Garrett Maines, another newcomer to the front of the field. Elliott Sadler Esports looking to go to the front as they are 3 wide side by side at the Daytona Super Stretch.
And guys, that high line is just so inviting that as soon as everybody up and down the middle line sees them coming, they immediately jump up and try to take advantage of it. But it looks like it's kind of biting them, because up at the top, the number 2 and the Elliott Sadler Esports, Garrett Maines, finds himself not going as quick as he saw those drivers before, and we're going to get another wreck.
Ryan Luza in the middle and cars around, exiting the tri-oval. Another yellow flag here in this 2021 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series Clash. And Luza was in the thick of it. He was for a moment there, that third car in line that Blake had just talked about. And Blake just went all wrong very, very quickly. Looked like Leahy tried to come down in front of Conti. It got Leahy loose, and then everybody reacted to the 32 going sideways.
And I think that's something that often happens here at super speedways, James. You even saw it a little bit earlier in turns 3 and 4 when everybody hit the apron. We saw Blade Witt shoot up into the pack. I think that's exactly what happened here. You see Ryan Luza, he's kind of the catalyst of this as he worked into the tri-oval. I think he saw that 32 of Keegan Leahy up front kind of go down to the bottom side and just kind of followed him down. And unfortunately, Graham Bolin, his Storehouse Esports machine, was down there waiting in the wake. And that's a couple of times we've seen this really talented field just simply, I guess, not knowing that a car's there or washing down a little too much. Maybe this tri-oval is hard to handle for these guys, but once again, this tri-oval has been a chaos spot so far tonight.
It goes back to an old principle of restrictor plate racing, Joe Peak, and that when you've got cars traveling at nearly 200 miles an hour and you have them packed in, 3 by 3 by 3, 4 rows, 5 rows deep, even if you see something happen ahead of you, there's just so little time to react to something that your reactions may upset some people in the rest of the field and throw them off, and you end up with some of the wrecks that we've seen this evening.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's the proverbial mousetraps and ping pong balls. Everything's going to be a chain reaction to the back. So no matter where you are, unless you're at the far, far back, there's not much you can do to try and get out of the way. And that's why we usually find ourselves having to encourage drivers to be a little bit patient. It looks like we've got Keegan Leahy here with you, James, though, to talk about how this race is going.
We do have the 2311 driver with us in the number 32, Keegan Leahy out of Halifax, Nova Scotia with us. And Keegan, you had a bit of a wild moment there a few laps ago.
It's really quiet on TeamSpeak for me. I can't quite hear you, but right now I'm just doing my best to save fuel. We barely have enough because we pulled a risky strategy earlier in the race to try to get it back up there after that crash. We have one reset, as you probably covered, so I use that, try not to wreck again, and hopefully have fuel in case we get a green-white checker.
How important is track position to you? You stayed out, you've tried to get it, so clearly it means a little something to you.
Yeah, it's really hard to pass here, so whenever you can get one position on somebody, it matters. You can see I just kind of jumped 30 people just from this strategy, so I got really lucky with that. There's no way to really go from last to first because we're all on equal cars. Everyone's so good at this, and the leaders don't want to make any crazy moves in those lines. So at least until we get down to the end of it, it's really hard to make progress.
You have a busy 20 laps left ahead of you, Keegan Leahy. Best of luck in this final third of the race.
Hey, yeah, again, I can't hear you guys at all, but thanks so much for the interview, and hope you guys enjoy the finish.
Keegan Leahy for 2311, one of the strongest drivers over the past 2 seasons, Blake McCandless. He was within a hood of winning the series championship 2 years ago, and I was odds-on favorite at points last year to win the title in 2020. So you wonder, is this the year potentially that the 32 makes that next leap and finds a way to get the job done?
I think it's hard to pick against Keegan Leahy. I think everybody who's been around this series or iRacing in general just knows how competitive he is, how much speed he can find in these virtual race cars. So I think Keegan Leahy, you got to think his teammate as well. They work so well together. He and Mitchell DeYoung over at 2311. I think they're going to be quite a feisty pair of drivers to have to go up against this season.
A great story between Mitchell DeYoung and Keegan Leahy, Joe Peak. Last year, DeYoung was Leahy's crew chief. Now he's his teammate in 2021. But we are now joined in the booth by the man who will start right behind Keegan Leahy on this restart. That is the number 2 for Elliott Sadler Esports, Garrett Maines out of Powhatan, Virginia. And Garrett, fun race so far. What have you learned in your first taste at Coke Series competition? Garrett Maines, James Pike here in the booth. You've had a fun go of it in your first race in Coke Series competition in 2021. What have you learned so far? We'll see if we can get Garrett a little bit later. But back to the point with Leahy and De Jong. A lot of fun, I think. They know each other so well. They worked together so well in 2020, Joe. And now they get the chance to race as teammates on the racetrack for 2311 in this new season.
And frankly, if I'm Leahy, I'm going to be picking the brain of Mitchell for those road courses all I can, because we know that Mitchell is a champion over on the rallycross side of all things. But that just goes to show that a good driver is a good driver. And seeing them come across disciplines like this is, to me, a great shining point of sim racing, that when you don't have the limits of money in your way, you can get the experience on those other disciplines and really show yourself to be just a general talent.
Take a look at Bobby Zielinski trying to get himself ready to go. One of the road course specialists in this eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series. And we'll see what he sees as we go back to green flag racing with 17 laps to go. A wild restart there for Keegan Leahy, who got sent through the middle and had to fight his way up to the top lane to get some breathing room. But now he's got Garrett Maines pinned to the middle and Graham Bolin making a move on the inside in that number 10 machine for Stewart Haas Esports.
Well, I'll tell you what, Keegan Leahy is using every lane on this racetrack to try and make moves, although Bolin bouncing off the apron, he's somehow able to collect it. Look at how close that 23-11 machine gets to Graham Bolin as they were working off the corner. And that is the one thing about this race, James. These drivers are testing the limits, getting right up to their doors, pinching. Again, this is perfect. Even if they wreck, they're learning something for next week. They're obviously kind of hurting their chances to win this race, but Keegan Leahy showing he's going to keep the track position. He has been in every single lane in the last lap, and Leahy trying to control this race. It's awfully hard to do when each lane has been as competitive as it is.
And guys, what you're seeing here is that these cars are so much more draggy with this fixed setup. We heard it before. It's hard to pass because you can get that run, but then you stall out up at the front, and that's why he's trying to side draft down to the 10 just to see if he can get him to drop back.
I don't know whether or not that counted as side drafting or side slam drafting with the amount that Leahy bounced off the side of the 10 machine. But in either case, it's he and that number 2 for Garrett Maines that come together as Maines gives a shot to Michael Conti, who goes sideways in the corner, and they spin and crash in turn 4 Daytona. Yellow flag out once again as we approach 15, now 14 laps to go when they cross the stripe, Blake.
And again, another case of drivers fighting over real estate. It's almost verbatim what we saw between Brian Schoenberg and Malik Ray just a little bit earlier. It was just on the entrance of turn 3 rather than in the tri-oval. And you're going to see it here on the replay that we'll pull up. It's going to be Garrett Maines and Michael Conti right there. And I think, again, these drivers are just going in every single lane. You never know where they're going to be, and I think it's just a case where you zigged and zagged at the same time between Garrett Maines and Michael Conti there at the front, and it has just not worked out for anybody behind them.
We'll get a good look at what happened as we see our instant replay that come through turn 3. There's the big move from both Leahy and Maines. And Maines, I think, was just trying to get some air on the nose of his number 2 machine. And I don't know if he realized that Conti was already alongside him, just sort of slid up. And when he went up into Conti lost the control of the front end of his car, Joe Peak. And I don't think there was much that anybody could have done after that.
Yeah, the 41 of Duval, unfortunately, had his Stewart Haas Esports right there, and there was no time for him to check up. The weird thing is that was probably the slowest big one I've ever seen happen. Everybody was pretty heads up about it and tried to check up and kind of watched Conti's car ping ball around, but no one was really able to, in the end, avoid it. It was just kind of like slowly watching yourself slip towards the river as you're sliding on ice, unfortunately.
Blake, I know you've done your fair share of racing on the surface, and when you see something like that happen in front of you at a plate track where you know there's a wreck happening and you're going to try and avoid it, but you also know there's not really much you can do, can you describe what that feeling is like for folks who haven't had the chance to run here?
Well, it's really tough, James, because the one thing that you have to realize, obviously, any wreck that goes up on the banking must eventually come down. I think the best place you can go is if you're on the bottom, you can try to slow yourself down, try to wheel that car on the apron, get down to the grass almost if you have to try and avoid the carnage, because it's so tough to try and go high to miss a wreck. Although, if you go high late enough, everybody's going to be washing back down the banking, and eventually there may be some room there to try and navigate your way through. But like you said, James, we can talk about theory and strategies all we want, but a lot of the time it's just luck. Although sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. It's just very tough to do, especially when every lane is clogged up like we've seen. We've seen guys in the bottom, the middle, and the top. So sometimes there is just nowhere to go when you're put in that position.
It can be very difficult, very tough, and you can try and get in the brakes, as you said, but especially if you're in the middle of a packed Joe Peak, you have to be worried about the drivers coming from behind who might not recognize what you see in front of your car, and they may run into you not realizing that you're trying to slow down to avoid what's happening out in front of your windshield.
Yeah, and those who've been paying attention when we've rode on board with these cars, especially at the driver's eye level, then you can finally see how blind you are when you're in the pack. Yes, you can kind of see through the windshields and gauge a little bit about what's going on, but you've essentially got all these hunks of virtual metal in front of you, and you can only see what's about 3 feet up the road. So, yeah, I mean, there's very little time to react when you can't really tell what is happening far up ahead. Let's take another look at it from the 41's perspective. This might actually drive home my point. Yeah, look at this right here. Yeah, you can see a bumper, but not much else. How are you going to know what's going on up there?
And that's part of the double-edged sword of plate racing, Blake, is that you would think logically that you'd want to give yourself enough space to see ahead of the car ahead of you, but that's the problem. You have to be tucked up on somebody's bumper, especially in these closing laps, if you want to get the right kind of run that will allow you to pass the people around you and eventually get the win.
That's true, and again, when we were talking about missing that wreck, you can see the great handiwork right there, great onboard shot there by our production crew to kind of showcase Dylan Duvall kind of wheeling back and forth between the apron to eventually save that car. But you see when that wreck's caused, two cars make contact in front of him. There is absolutely nowhere to go. He goes right into the back of Michael Conti. But again, when you're barreling off into turn 3 at over 200 miles an hour, there's just not anything that you can do. But showcasing right there why these guys are in this series right here to be able to wheel their way through that accident.
Of course, if you want more information on how to start your iRacing career, log on to iRacing.com today, where new memberships are available for 40% off of the regular price. We'll get set to go back to green flag racing, coming up on 10 laps to go on this clash for the 2021 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. No points tonight, just an exhibition race. The real fun starts 1 week from tonight when the season opener returns here to Daytona. Green flag back in the air this time for the number 32 of Keegan Leahy. Will try and get a better jump this time around than he did the restart prior.
Looks like Leahy's got a nice shove from behind the 97 of Clampett, making sure that those two get a big run. For the first time, they're actually clearing everybody. Garrett Maines sees the writing on the wall and immediately jumps behind them. This is actually proving to be pretty effective here. The first time we've ever seen a gap with the front group.
But with the gap comes a run, and look at the 44 machine of Isaac Gann for Klingerman Sport up on the top line. They've had a big day today, just announced that they were switching to Chevrolets for 2021. As Gann makes the move, and they wreck in the tri-oval once again. Car sideways as the rest of the field enters turn number 1. No yellow flag yet as Ashton Crowder is up on his lid, but Keegan Leahy continues to lead this field.
Well, and
There's
they'll finally Yeah, we'll finally throw the caution flag as again a car was left hanging upside down. We could get the flip count at least on one to start this young season, but once again, just more jockeying back in the pack. Drivers not exactly sure where they're going. It looked like Kane Cook and I believe perhaps it was Blade Whitten's Clint Boyer Esports machine that got tangled in there. And man, I'm shocked, James, that obviously, like you said last year, race turned out much different than what we're seeing now. And, you know, this isn't all too surprising. We think back to the practice that we were watching in the minutes leading up to this race. The guys were being just as aggressive, making all these types of moves. And I guess when nothing's on the line, these guys are just using this to try and learn everything they can. And they are just sweeping up and tearing up a lot of virtual race cars here tonight.
I think there are a few different ways that you can look at it, as we'll take a look at the replay and see what exactly happened to bring out this yellow flag. Part of it is you can get your wrecks out of the way and be done with it. Part of it is you learn a few things too. As everybody shuffles around in the trial, well, looks like it's one of the Jim Beaver Esports cars. That's Kane Cook in the 15, who makes contact with the 14 of Blade Witt, who bounces into Ashton Crowder, and then Crowder collects the 15. You see Michael Conte coming in at the very end, nowhere for that number 8 Junior Motorsports machine to go, and the yellow flag out again. But as I was saying, Joe P, part of it is you can sort of get the wrecks out of your system now so they don't happen next week when it actually does hurt you in the point standings. And you also get the opportunity to sort of find the limits. So maybe it is a little bit frustrating, especially for some of these drivers at the front, but the experience gained here with the drivers, with the track, with all of the different variables in play, I would imagine would pay a lot of dividends next week when you really do need it.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a wise saying that a person once told me, which is essentially, you don't learn how to do things by getting everything right. You get them wrong, then learn how not to do it, essentially. It's sort of I think, kind of a Thomas Edison thing. But the number 32 right now, as he leads up at the top, we see him coming back around to get the green flag pretty soon here. I mean, he's been holding it up front. And actually, I think, speaking of, learning how to do things from doing it right, he and Clampett and Maines, my goodness, the jump that they got on the backstretch kind of impressed me, because I thought that they would be sucked up by the rest of the field pretty quickly, and that didn't really happen.
We are now joined in the booth by Kane Cook, driver of the number 15 for Jim Beaver Esports. And Kane, just a wild ride there. Take us through what happened in the trial to bring out that yellow.
Yeah, well, someone, I don't know if they got into Isaac or if he decided to go up there. It looked like he got punched out of line. So I was anticipating like catching Isaac and slowing down and being able to deal with that. And then I think someone hooked Reynolds and he shot up directly in front of us, and I was packed. Like there was someone giving me 8-wheel drive. So I either had to make it 4 wide or run into a car with a 20-mile-an-hour run. And I did the thing that had a chance of saving the field, and there was just not enough room there to make that work. It was close, but I can't really see where that car is to the left. And then, I mean, there's nothing to do about that. So kind of a shame. It feels like that all night. I almost got through the first caution, got clipped by someone trying to avoid crossing pit road safely and killed us. Then got back to the front, and then they wrecked in the front row coming to the comp caution and killed us. And yeah, I don't know. It's been like that my first 2 years in the series. It's like that tonight. A lot of fun though tonight. A lot of fun.
Maybe not the finish that you want this evening, but we'll see if Kane has a little bit better luck next week. But as we get set to go back, green flag racing, lights are off on the pace truck. We haven't had the chance to talk much about Keegan Leahy's restrictor plate prowess, but it's worth noting, Blake McCandless, that Leahy is the defending race winner of the season opener. He got the win in the first race of the season last year, en route to a fantastic campaign.
It certainly was. And when we think about drivers who you think about going out on these 1.5 miles, on these short tracks, and they're winning, you always think about plate tracks. There are specific drivers that pop up in your head, but it's always interesting how many of those same drivers that are good at other disciplines or other forms of oval racing end up flexing their muscles on the plate tracks as well. So something about the mentality of these drivers that they're going to learn any discipline that's in front of them. And Keegan Leahy, no doubt about it, one of those drivers that you can throw him on any type of racetrack and he's going to find a way to figure it out.
Speaking of drivers that have had success at Daytona and Coke Series competition in the past, how about the number 38 of Casey Kerwin? We haven't talked much about Casey from XCENT that much tonight, Joe Peak, but he won the Clash 3 years ago and will become the first repeat winner of the Clash if he can bring it to victory lane tonight.
I'm sure he'd love that stat too. So 38, no doubt, is going to be trying hard. And we keep talking about learning things. Experience is the best teacher. So the 38 has the experience of knowing how to get to the front and win this thing at the end. We're so few laps to the end, so no wonder we see him up in the front 2 rows.
Leahy and Clampett, your front row. We will come to 6 laps to go when they hit this stripe, and the intensity level is about to ratchet up maybe 2 or 3 rungs when we go back to green flag racing. Leahy on the gas pedal once again, and we are underway at Daytona with the 23 or the 32 and the 97 2x2 leading this field into turn 1, Joe Pete.
I think if I'm Casey Kerwin in the 38, that 4th one there, the 2nd on the high side, I would have tried to get low, but then that avenue has gone away. Instead, Doucette is going to be able to slip in there. So unfortunately, it looks like our drivers before that jumped away aren't going to get the same advantage this time. The 2 and the 32 have everybody holding right onto that bumper, which is good news for everybody else because they really don't want to lose touch with the top pair.
They come out of turn 4. It will be 5 laps to go. This time by Leahy's got control of that inside line, but here comes the 97 machine of Logan Clampett with help from the 67 of Alan Bowes from McLaren Shadow. First time we talked about him much tonight. Now he's making the work. Quick report from Tim Terry as we close this race down.
A rookie looking for his first win in his first race with this series. No pressure, right? Especially if the boss man is in your ear. Let's hear it from Garrett Maines and Elliott Sadler.
The race started. Tonight's race was all about making friends for next week. But I know you were kind of late. You were working. Yeah. That's what we were talking about with the other guys, making friends tonight. Because you're new. Because you're new, right? So they're not, they kind of maybe trust you, maybe not, don't know, feel you out. Like that in real life, too.
So there you go. 5 laps, 4 laps to go in this one, James. And, no pressure at all for the rookie running in second, trying to win his first race in this series, right?
Not only is Elliott Sadler his owner, he's also a fellow Virginian. Maines from Powhatan, Elliott Sadler from nearby Emporia. So a little bit of a Commonwealth connection there, and we'll see if Maines can use it to get to the front. He's got a Toyota towing him down the front straightaway, Blake.
He does have that tow working for him right now, but now they are side by side. Leahy on the bottom, and a great shove for Logan Clampett and his William Byron Esports machine up front. He's trying to prove himself here tonight. Side drafting off each other. They'll approach the stripe this time. 3 to go.
3 laps to go. There goes a peek from one of the space station gaming machines trying to create that 3rd lane on the top side, but it's not quite coming yet. It's still Leahy. It's still Clampett as they enter turn 1, Joe Pete.
And Malik Ray has got a monster run here, getting a nice shove from our current champion. Ottinger hooked up with him. And let's see if they can get this going all the way to the front and maybe slide on down here, Blake.
And he'll slide on down, but how about the push that Malik Ray has as there's a wreck in the back of the pack, and that is going to bring out the caution flag. It was well behind what was going on here. I think Michael Conti and Mitchell DeYoung had gotten hooked up, and this was way behind the pack. This was all the way in turns 1 and 2 while they were barreling down the Daytona super stretch. And unfortunately, I think Conti's engine or something may have expired on that machine. He just drastically slowed up, and you can see him laughing it off right there with Mitchell DeYoung, but it is going to put us in green-white checkered territory.
I just heard them talking about making friends. I think 2 cars at the very back causing a caution just by going slightly sideways is not going to endear themselves to the rest of the field.
Maybe not to the rest of the field, but Blake, if you're Michael Conti, with the luck that you've had in that number 8 Virginia Motorsports tonight, I almost feel like all you can do is laugh and shake it off and hope next week goes a little bit better, because it's not really been much fault of his own that he's been caught up in so many incidents this evening. But here we are, and that's about the 3rd or 4th yellow by my count that Conti's been involved in as we take a look at the replay.
Yeah, we'll see right here. Obviously, well off the pack. They're just trying to keep up. And you could see Mitchell DeYoung. He just got a slightly too low on Michael Conti. And, it's not rare to see that offset. You don't want to get directly behind that driver. You want to offset a little bit to try and get that run, make sure that you can catch him down the straightaway, get a little air on your nose to cool down that race car. And obviously, DeYoung just riding along back there just got a little too close to him, gets into the back, and obviously that's what brings out the caution.
A wild, wild afternoon or evening, depending on how you look at it, for Mitchell DeYoung, Joe Peak, and he's learned a little bit. But we'll actually take the moment to...
Mitchell DeYoung, it seems like things got a little bit hairy there at the back, but you guys look like you were kind of laughing it off. Would you say it's fair to say that you're having fun tonight?
I mean, obviously this is not the way we, wanted to run tonight. Just caught up in some of the wrecks. Tried to avoid them, but didn't really work out. But no, that was really silly of me, honestly. I shouldn't have brought out that yellow, but, I think Michael and I were both pretty damaged, so I was just trying to kind of keep us both as close as we could, just gain a few spots in case something happens. And I don't even know what happened. I just seemed to have turned him, but wasn't even trying to do that. But we're just trying to learn what we can here, get ready for the big one next weekend. So, we'll see.
Now, Mitchell, I understand that you are not in a typical place that a lot of these other drivers are racing from. What ungodly hour is it there?
It is currently 4:10 a.m. here in Germany. So, when we qualified for this, we weren't really planning on being out here, but just the way things ended up, we are here and just having to adapt. So we have our road racing stuff on the weekend, and then we have to quickly switch over our schedule to, staying up in the middle of the night. So, that's just part of the job. So it's cool that we're still able to take part in this, like, all the way across the world. So.
It's the joys of sim racing. Thanks for talking to us, Mitchell. I'd say, James, that sort of a mixed bag. It's kind of like what you were just talking about, where, it wouldn't be fun if they didn't laugh and joke about what's been going on here.
But also really impressive break that, we get the chance to see drivers competing physically from Germany, from Canada, from the United States. It speaks to the international panache of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series.
That is one thing about... Yeah,
Sorry,
that's
go
one
ahead,
thing
Blake.
about oval racing is just that there's no limit on where it can be. Obviously, on iRacing, you'll typically see many of the international crowd outside of the United States, where I'm from, that will take place in road racing. But that is the brilliant thing about iRacing, that in a world where oval racing is at least more popular in this country, that, again, you can be anywhere and drive on the high banks of Daytona or Talladega or wherever these guys are going to go for the rest of the season. It just speaks to the multiple disciplines that can come onto here at iRacing and how accessible it is for so many people.
Lots of fun that we'll have over the 18 race slate that will cover this 2021 season, which of course begins right back here at Daytona next Monday night, 9 p.m. You can watch on eNASCAR.com and iRacing's platforms to see the season opener, the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. And if we've learned anything tonight, Joe Peak, I think we've learned that we are in for an incredibly entertaining show next Monday night.
Yeah, certainly so. And the fact that everybody is to their best advantage really is a testament to the level of these drivers. It's sort of every part of the Buffalo kind of mentality that they're taking. Yeah, it's for fun. Yeah, you get out there and there's nothing at stakes, but you got to use it what you can while everybody's together. Because how often do they have all of the other drivers here in the Pro Series racing each other?
How often do you get green-white checkers at Daytona? An equally important question. We're about to see our first. So it's 2 laps to go. When we get the green flag, if we get the white, we will race all the way back around as Keegan Leahy gets back on the gas pedal. 2 laps to go in this 2021 Clash as Leahy has to hold off the 97 and the 11 of Malik Ray, who's already bouncing off Logan Clampett as they head into turn 1, Joe Peak.
Clampett's got a decent run, but he's going to be on the outside of it, so you're not going to really see him come back forward here until they get the momentum off of the banking. It's going to slingshot him down the backstretch just like that, and there goes the 97. Question is, can he, Blake, get in front of the 32?
That's the question he's asking himself. Is Clampett, he's going to complete the move as they work into 3 and 4. A power move from Logan Clampett, who got a big shot from Garrett Maines off the banking in 3 and 4. It's Logan Clampett out front looking for the white flag.
Clampett got a great shove for the number 2 machine, but here comes Garrett Maines back on the outside with help from Nick Ottinger, who was swept up in a wreck earlier as we take the white flag here at Daytona. It's Maines and Ottinger on the top side, Clampett and Leahy on the inside as they go on the one for the last time.
I'm putting my money on Ottinger here. You don't go against the champion, giving a good shove to Maines up on the high side. Once again, repeat of last time. Bottom is just shorter run. Oh no, looks like we're going to get a wreck as the 32 is up to the outside. The 2 clips and no caution yet. They're all trying to save it. Are we going to keep it going, Blake?
And the William Byron Esports machines door to door here for the final time here through 3 and 4. Malik Bray looking for a way around. They're side by side. Malik Bray looking to the top.
Ray goes to the top side, gets the fence. Ottinger bounces off of the 97 machine. They'll be door to door when they come to the start-finish line. And at the end of it all, it is Logan Clampett by 13 one-thousandths of a second, who goes to victory lane in the 2021 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series Clash at Daytona. Joe Peak, it was just maybe centimeters, and I think Logan Clampett's just as surprised as the rest of us are.
And see, this is why I don't bet, because I was saying I'd put my money on Nick Ottinger, and he was 13,000 shy of this thing. But that's the margins you work with when you're dealing with plate racing.
To be fair, I think Logan had a little bit of a help just because it got so crazy behind him coming down the back straightaway, Blake.
It certainly did, and a lot of that was caused. Obviously, Clampett was able to make the move the turn prior, but it looked like Garrett Maines and Keegan Leahy, and again, in a race where nothing matters but the win, you can't blame Keegan. He got behind Logan Clampett, thought he was clear to the high side. Unfortunately, Maines was there. They hit, they save it, and unfortunately, that just created the chaos behind them. I was wondering if Clampett got too far out there, but he was able to hold on.
So much excitement there that Nick Ottinger in celebration sent his teammate into the fence, but it's still an opportunity for us to bring you tonight's winning moment, which is brought to you, as always, by Coca-Cola, the official fan refreshment of eNASCAR. What a huge way to start this campaign off, Joe Pete, for William Byron Esports. Not only do they have the defending champion, they go 1-2 in the very first race of the season. It's not for points, but if that's any sort of indication as to how their 2021 will go, look out for the numbers 25 and 97.
Yeah, when you have 2 drivers who are working that well together that they can, especially in as a chaotic race as this one, that's something that is going to turn everybody's heads, because 2 is better than 1. I mean, I know it's a cliche, but when you have someone as your wingman, that makes it so much harder to defeat them. And I think that Nick and Logan are certainly going to be ones to put themselves in the mix of things as this season progresses.
It's time to take a look at the Coca-Cola move in the race, and we will just go back and watch the entire last lap to see how it panned out for Logan Clampett, as he had a pretty good run here going into 1, Blake McCandless.
He certainly did, but what was really interesting is look who's behind Garrett Maines, the William Byron Esports machine of Nick Ottinger. So while Clampett was out front, Ottinger was trying to give Garrett Maines that shove. You'll see right there, Leahy thought he was clear. They ended up saving it for the most part. You see the 79 Clint Boyer racing machine slams into the wall, but Clampett, Ottinger gets side by side to defend. Malik Ray looking for somewhere to go, just wasn't able to get the run he needed to get to Jake Matheson right here. But of course, nobody's going to push each other. They're all going for broke. He gets shoved into the wall, and then it's just chaos trying to hang on from there.
I think we do have to give a call to both Matheson and Malik Ray, Joe Peak, because Ray tried to use the same move that he did in the qualifying series of the Coke Series back in November, but it didn't quite pan out for him this time around, as Logan Clampett goes to victory and William Byron Esports gets a 1-2 finish in this clash for 2021. Great finish for Jake Matheson and Jake Nichols. The Jakes go 3 and 4 as Jimmy Bullis gets a top 5 for Richmond Raceway Esports.
And you've got Nathan Lyon finishing 6th, followed by Malik Ray in his Ford. We switch to the next slide with Justice coming home in 11th. These are the drivers probably that had to scatter on the backstretch. Guys like Blake Reynolds, Doucette, Davies, and Salas to try and make their way just to see the finish.
So much carnage, and maybe not the worst finish in the world for Michael Conti to come home 20th, Blake, after all the trouble he endured tonight.
He certainly did, but again, they were just trying their best to hang on. A couple of damaged cars along with Michael Conti, and directly behind him there, well off the pack after obviously having some tough damage. And then, of course, you see those -1 laps and several drivers that were just not able to make it to the end of this thing as a result of all the cautions. And again, with a fast repair, James. So I know this is a clash. I know there's not points on the line. But it is interesting to see these drivers, not many of them were able to make it to the end. Of course, when we're doing it for real next week, you don't get that fast repair. You get one shot at it.
It's going to be a lot more nervous, I think, next week. A tough night for John Gorlinski, who can't repeat his feat from a year ago. Winner in this race in 2020, 26th in 2021. You see some of the other drivers who really struggled, and I think more than anything else got the bad end of a few bad breaks, Joe Pig.
Yeah, from here on down, essentially, these are drivers that ran out of those free repairs and were just kind of cruising around. We saw guys like Alfala getting spun out, along with guys like Luza back there in the back, with Schoenberg as well being one of our first to unfortunately call it a day.
Well, how about we take a moment and we talk to our race winner? We're now joined in the booth by Logan Clampett. And Logan, based off of the shots that we saw right at the end of that race, right after you crossed the start-finish line, were you as surprised as the rest of us that you were able to get that done?
Yeah, that was oh man, that whole last lap was complete chaos. I was mirror driving at that point, but that was boy, what a way to start off the season there. that was a lot of fun. That was really exciting, and it's really cool to have Nick get second there with me joining William Byron Esports this season. So it's a great way to kick off the season for sure. Obviously, this wasn't the first season opener race, but it was a fun race, and it was a great way to start off the year.
It's been such a huge year for you, a year of change, and to come out in this race and have this kind of performance and get the 1-2 for William Byron Esports. What does that say about you? What does that say about your prospects for this upcoming season?
Well, I think we got a really good team under our hands for this season. Me and Nick, defending champion Nick Ottinger, and we work together with each other on Team Conti. So I think that it's going to be really fun, really awesome, and I think we're going to do really good. So I'm really just looking forward to the season and spending my time over here at William Byron Esports.
Logan, congratulations on your victory this evening. We look forward to seeing if you can repeat the feat next week at Daytona.
Thank you. Hopefully I can.
We turn our attention now to the teammate of Logan Clampett at William Byron Esports. It's the defending series champion Nick Ottinger, who is with our Joe P.
Hey, Nick, congratulations on coming home in a 1-2 with your teammate. But my question to you is, it looks like you got a little loose off of turn 4. If you hadn't have done that and banged into him, do you think you could have taken it those 13 thousandths more forward?
Possibly. I mean, that's very hard to gauge, in a small margin like that. And I just decided to, turn 3, we knew it was basically going to be a 2 or 3 horse race, and pretty much whichever one was going to get the push from, Malik in that instance was going to be in a really good shot. And I took a leap to kind of block Malik, and that just got me a little loose trying to stay off the wall, and it just pitched the car a little aggressively, and it just pushed me straight into, Logan. That just killed our momentum. But, all in all, 1-2 for WB Esports, great showing for Logan in his first, official kind of race with WB Esports, and I'm just looking forward to this year. I mean, being able to be in the spot we are at William Byron Esports, it's a dream to just basically drive with with him, have the friendship we have, and especially with Logan coming on board, I think it's gonna be a strong year for us.
Now, how much were you two working together during that race, especially towards the final laps and that final restart? Because it clearly looks like it was a bit of luck that you wound up next to each other in 3 and 4 and down to the line. But was there intention to try and get together, hook up, and see what you can do to both get as high up as possible?
I mean, realistically, at a plate track, you look for your teammates as much as possible. But, it's a chess game that you realize have to worry about yourself. And we were in a fortunate spot, basically missing, Keegan and I think it was Garrett Maines making contact on the back stretch that put us in a good spot. And, we just try utilizing our momentum. And I mean, this race is, it's just essentially just a test race for us and putting ourselves in very vulnerable spots and pretty much just getting whatever we can to, learn for our big race Monday. And I think we went to the back a couple of times, not with our own doing. We led a lot of laps tonight and, had a good strong showing with WB Esports. And, Monday is going to be a really good test for us to see what kind of speed we bring in our number 25 machine. And, hope we start up front like we did tonight. And, very looking forward to pretty much a stellar 2021 season. And, going to be a tall task, with one in your end. So very much looking forward to it.
I'm sure you are, and I'm sure the swagger of that crown as well as the 1-2 are going to carry them over well. In the meantime, we have Blake ready to talk to Jake Matheson.
Well, we talked to a couple of veterans. Why don't we talk to one of the 11 rookies that were out here for the first time in this series tonight? And Jake, I'll start with you. How about this entire experience? I'm sure whether it was just the last year or even longer, you prepared to try to work your way to this series. What was your first impression?
Chaotic for sure. There was a couple wrecks early on. We got involved in the very first one on the front stretch. Took the quick repair. Went back out there, just kind of rid around the back, didn't have a car after that, so I had to save it. Just waited till the end and started pushing when I felt the time was right, and thankfully we ended up towards the front. It started to get messy on the last lap. Thankfully we were able to drive through it, and the vision of a win was right there, and then Logan Klemba's rear bumper was there. So, it was good up until then. P3 is still awesome. I definitely think that's a good way to start the season.
Absolutely, Jake. And just before we let you go, just one more thing. Obviously, you come out tonight is kind of your way to get your feet wet. What did you learn about the competitors around you and just what it takes to really run in the series? I know you work your way up the ladder, but once you get here, it's just, I know many drivers have talked about it, it's just a different beast when everybody is as good as they are in this series.
Yeah, I mean, all the way through Road to Pro and the Pro Series, don't get me wrong, it's very, very stacked competition. But once you make it up to the very top like this, it's, like you said, a whole different beast. I mean, to be fair, I do know a lot of the drivers around me, so I knew who I was racing and how they raced, and I trust a lot of the guys out here. I mean, at the top for a reason. It's really easy. In a way, it's kind of easier to race people that is going to be clean than people you don't know. So going through this whole race, and it's going to be the whole season too. It's really good to know it's top of the line competition.
Well, Jake, we appreciate you talking to us, and obviously good luck with Williams Esports this season. And James, what a crazy night we just saw.
And if you liked what you saw this evening, don't worry, because we got more coming your way 1 week from tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern, eNASCAR.com and iRacing's platforms. It is the season opener for the 2021 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series right here from the World Center of Racing. We'll go a little bit longer. We'll award some points. We'll find out who claims the first checkered flag of this 12th season of Coke Series competition. Almost time to sign off, but Joe Peak, if there's one word that you would use to describe how you feel about next week after seeing tonight's race, what is it?
I know this is going to sound like a cop-out, but anticipation. Absolutely anticipation. Just because I feel like what we saw with all this, so many rookies coming in, everybody is giving it their all here. And you said it at the top that this means that the competition is going to be very stacked. So I feel like that it's going to give us a real treat. I feel like it's going to be a sort of season that we're not used to, maybe.
Blake McCandless, I guess you can't use anticipation, but are there any other words in your vocabulary that you would use to describe how you feel about what we're going to see next Tuesday night?
I'm just excited. I know that may be another word as well, but I also think that once we get these points on the line, again, a lot of these guys are good friends. They were out here having fun. You heard even Kane Cook. He got wrecked twice tonight, and he described this race as fun. I guarantee you, once the points are on the line next week, that's not going to happen. I think these guys obviously were using this as kind of a testing ground, way to get their feet wet and kind of caught back up to speed. But once we start next week, business picks up. This turns into a job for a lot of these drivers, and I think you'll finally see the mindset really start to narrow and focus in for these guys.
Aggression to me is the one that stands out. We saw so many people going for it over the course of this evening. We'll see who decides to go for it next week. At 9 o'clock, you'll see the season opener from Daytona on eNASCAR.com and iRacing. For our team here at iRacing, our director, Drew Adamson, and our team here in the booth and on pit road, Tim Terry, Blake McCandless, and Joe Peak, I'm James Pike. Thank you so much for watching our broadcast of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series Clash at Daytona. We look forward to seeing you next Monday night at 9 o'clock for the season opener from Daytona.